All right, it's been a little bit. I don't normally do these, but I'm actually reviewing some product from Huge Miniatures. They've come out with a fluorescent pigment line, and I'd reached out on Instagram asking if there was any testing or experience with this in epoxy resin, and whoever I was talking to, I think it might have been Britain, said they hadn't, and he'd love it if I would do some review or let him know any feedback, so I'm going to give that a try. I bought 3 of these. I'm not being sponsored. I bought the red, blue, and green pigments. These come at $8.50 US. They have a little flip top as well as a screw cap. They are sealed, so you don't lose these. They don't come to you in a way that they can just open up in the packaging. It's actually fairly handy. I do recommend just using the screw cap. Don't use the flip top. They are secure, but they tend to rack up powder. So more on that later. Just what to expect. Whenever you order from Huge Minis, they send you a discount code for future orders. Good for a little while. It's very handy. No, the code isn't there. Don't bother rewinding. And they even threw me some swag this time. Little Halloween candy, a sticker, and some Huge Minis dice. I do like getting dice. That's actually a really cool perk, so thank you. I'm using some Liquid Diamonds 2-part epoxy resin. I got this from the epoxy resin store. They are my go-to supplier. They have all kinds of resins. They have marine resin, casting resin, coating resin, UV resin, instant resin for tumblers. They have a lot of pigments and dyes. Their customer service is great. Their products are fine. So I'm just using what I know here. And I do not know how to film things in UV very well, but I'm just using a little keychain that I got from Technoglow Inc. And as you can see, these do glow up very nicely. Now, these are not glow in the dark. These are fluorescents. They do show up under blacklight. They do not glow and hold a charge. So, disclaimer. All right, so I figured what I'd do here, I'm using 2 colors just to get a good sample. I've got red and blue there. I'm going to mix up 60 milliliters of the resin. It's a 2-to-1 mix, so if you do 40 and 20, you're good. This Liquid Diamonds, if you're new to resin, is very forgiving. You can be off the mixture a little bit as long as you mix it well. It's totally fine, and it cures a little faster than normal. Most 2-to-1 resins take at least 2 days. This will do it in about a day, day and a half. Mine was done in a day in a nice, warm, cool area, so that worked out really, really well. And it doesn't bubble much, so I'm going to shut up about the resin now. I'm just going to say read your instructions, do your shopping. If you're starting casting, I do recommend Liquid Diamonds. That's a good one to work with. It's not too expensive. Definitely check them out at the epoxyresinstore.com. As another little hint, do mix your resin like crazy. Follow the instructions. Not all resins are created equally. So I just split up my resin into 30 milliliters each, and failing having a spoon because I'm still unpacking, I'm just using a coffee stir stick for a little bit here. Disclaimer, I use too much pigment for the resin. The pigment blends very well. This does take to the resin just about as well as any other pigment, so there really is no problem with that. But be aware that if you use too much, what happens is it doesn't totally dissolve. You get clumps, you get particles that don't mix in fully, and those end up settling. Now, especially with a casting resin is meant for deeper pores. These can go anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches. When you get to the big, heavy-duty river table stuff, that can be, I think, up to 6 inches a pop. The trick to it, the reason that it works the way it does, it has a long curing time so that bubbles rise to the surface, imperfections come out, and you get a smooth, clear, glassy finish. The problem with that, though, is that if you have unmixed pigment, if you have things that don't totally dissolve into the resin, then it will settle to the bottom of your mold, and you're going to see that happen here. Again, that is not on the pigment. This is about what I figured it would take, maybe a little more. And some particles just did settle on the bottom. But as you can see, it mixes evenly, it spreads out evenly, it does dissolve. It's not that it doesn't dissolve into the resin at all. I just use too much. I want to be really clear about that. So I'm just going to pour this in. This is an irregular gemstone mold that I have. I've used this for a lot of different things. It's just a very good tester. It's a very good go-to. You can make small molds that don't take a lot of resin, don't take a lot of time. So there we go. And I got a little left over, so I will do one gem will be mixed. It'll be half blue, half red. Just using up what I got here. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing with the red, and you see what I mean with the lid. The powder, if you close it the wrong way, if it gets knocked over, it just kind of goes everywhere. Pigment powder is one of those things you don't really want to mess with. You don't want it to get in a situation where you're making a mess. And speaking of messes, you can see here I'm using a lot more powder than I did with the blue. But still gonna mix it in, still gonna give you guys a good try. Now there is no difference in terms of the mixing from the red to the blue. It went in, it dissolved just as well. The colors are very pretty, they're very vibrant, even without a black light. This is just a regular, 5,000 Kelvin work light. And you see that very vividly. I'm happy with the coloration on this and how it went. And it's very solid. It's not swirly, you don't get unevenness, you don't get patches of clear resin and, tinted resin. It goes very, very well. So this dissolves, like I said, fairly well. I just, like an idiot, used a little too much pigment for what I was doing. And one way you can tell is when you're done pouring your resin, you look at your cup or you look at your tools, and you'll see it pooled in the bottom there. This did not all dissolve, but again, that's not on the pigment, that's on the user. As usual, I will be lighting out some bubbles here. If you end up with bubbles in resin, you can use a little lighter. It doesn't have to be a torch, but that tends to be a little bit easier. And about 24 hours later, we were cured, hardened, and ready to demold. So here we are. And like I said, this is a very good resin. It gives a very good finish. Very clear, no bubbles. If you just get them stirred out, mixed out, you heat up your resin, you use a torch at the end. I only had to do it the once. I didn't have to watch this and keep doing it. So, like I said, this didn't fully dissolve in. You can tell the very bottom of the mold, what looks like the top here, you can see that there's pigment undissolved, and that was in every piece. There were little bits that just sunk to the bottom. Those aren't bubbles. I looked really hard at this, and you can see side on, there's nothing you can see from the sides. It's only on the bottom of the molds. So that is undissolved pigment, unfortunately. Doesn't look terrible. It's not the worst mistake you can make, but it definitely does show up. Anyway, all in all, I do recommend the pigment. It blends in well. It's very forgiving. Again, I'm using my little UV keychain here. You can see there is some glow up. It's not weak. It actually looks really good in person. My camera is not totally doing this justice. And the colors are bright. They're vivid. This is exactly the kind of thing I would want to see, and I do have some projects in mind for this kind of thing. If you've seen my shorts and other stuff, you've seen I've really been working on crystals and a way to make them glow, and this is a way to do it if I'm going to use a black light versus actual glow in the dark. So check out hugeminiatures.com, get a hold of some fluorescent pigment powders. They come in red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and a more magenta kind of pinky purple. And you can buy them individually for about $8.50 US, or I think $45 for a 6-pack. Don't quote me, just check out the site. And there you have it. See you later.